Chapter 9, Influence Without Overconfidence. So this section is pretty cool too. I really like it. It talks about Jeff Bezos, and it talks about how he was telling investors, yeah, um, we have a 70% chance of failing, so only if you want to lose your money. I mean, don't put your money in us unless you're okay with losing that money. I think that was brilliant because sometimes people will put risk in lower probability things. People will go for the 30% chance. That's still 1 out of 3. So if you were to do the ball experiment, that means there are 3 balls, basically. Maybe like, I don't know how you could say 3 and 1/3, but basically 3 balls in a jar. You can pick one, and one of them will be right. You know, so 30% chance. So people will still be willing to bet on you. But also you're being honest with them, and they won't feel jilted if they're like, oh, I really believe that this was going to come out on top, and then it didn't. It's very, 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 common that, you know, 1 out of 3, you could still win, and people are still okay taking the bet. What I think is attractive about that is that you know your chances, so you're not disappointed, and causes it forms security, not in money but in trust, and trust is what's more important than money. Security and trust is more important than security and money when it comes to business. Yes, because trust, in the end, it goes full circle. Trust is what generates money. If people trust you to do what you say, and they know what they're getting into, there's no reason for them not to give you their money, because the expected outcome that you are promising is what you will deliver. So I'm stopping in the middle of this next section because she's talking about Benjamin Franklin. And what I think is really interesting about this is that Benjamin Franklin, while he had a lot of social confidence, he never said words like certainty, like certainly, like I'm 100% certain or whatnot. That's what's interesting. And I think that even for my own business, or my own, when I think about my own sales pitch or whatnot, I have to, be the same way, in terms of like not telling them you're absolutely going to win. Like, that doesn't build trust when you really think about it. That builds doubt more, right? But if you say something like, look, I'll be honest, it's going to be maybe, it's going to be 50% on me and 50% on you, which is why I know on my end, my 50% I will deliver, but I need to know you will deliver, because that's really what's important, is if you will do your part in order to, for example, learn Japanese. You know, I can't be doing all the hard work for you, right? You have to be doing the work too. So, and then that's what will qualify somebody for the kind of work, is like if they have more control, you know, and whatnot. So this is, I feel like for my own business, I teach people Japanese, and but a teacher can only do so much just on their own. The actual individual has to do it as well. And for me, if I'm getting a student, I have to qualify that student. And even for me, I have to run this probability check. I'm really listening to see if this person will be the kind of person who will succeed. And if they're not the kind of person who will succeed, if they're not the kind of person who will put in daily work, if it's not a person who is committed, if it's not somebody who has the drive to continue, then it's not worth either my time or their time. So that's what I think is really important, is, the trust that comes from keeping to your word, and not only keeping to your word and sticking to the word, but also on both parties. Can they both deliver? Anyways, those are my thoughts. There's now a shift to Abraham Lincoln, and what's funny is that Abraham Lincoln can express that he's wrong. He can totally say you're right and I was wrong. And even so, somebody says that no one could ever dominate him when they were in his presence. And it's because Abraham Lincoln was very self-assured, so he was very aware of his own blind spots, and he was okay with that. So I really think one interesting thing about knowing the truth, or seeing your own self-reflection, this, knowing the truth also, I think, has a great value when you apply it to yourself, and you're not delusional about who you are as a person, and how you come off as or whatnot. When you're not delusional about yourself, and you know what happens when you do certain things, you know how it's perceived, you understand the mores of society, and you actually, are honest with yourself, you can be okay in your own skin, because you know the game, you know how it works, and you understand how it influences people. So that's really good. That's what I see with Abraham Lincoln in this example. Confidence doesn't mean that 100% that you're right. Confidence is when you're 100% right and when you're 100% wrong. When you have 100% clarity of who you are, the good things about you and the bad things about you. So if anybody attacks you, you're okay with it because you know already. Right? So it doesn't matter. And if you know that somebody is dominant about you or with you about one certain thing, you're okay with it because you understand that already. You're not deluding yourself, and that does give confidence because you know the truth. You know how it works. You know that this programmer might be faster than you. That's okay. It doesn't matter. That's okay. It's like, I'll give that to you. That's fine. But, and it also probably means you're aware of the things that you're good at, that, everybody is balanced in different ways. While you may be smart in one area, somebody else is smart in another area. While you have great traits growing up in this kind of family, somebody else has opposite traits, but those traits also end up being beneficial. Just as some of your traits that you see as beneficial can also be non-beneficial. So basically what that means is that, there's an upside and a downside for everything, regardless, no matter what. And when you know where you are, where you stand, that, that leads to social confidence, I'm pretty sure. And it also leads to, the ability to be okay with things, to be okay when you're wrong, to be okay when you fail, to be okay when things don't go right. It's all right because you've seen it all already and you know yourself, and you're not expecting something of yourself that is impossible. You get it. And there's a lot of comfort that comes from that. People judge you on social confidence, not epistemic confidence. So this is a quick story of venture capitalists, huge venture capitalists, who takes on Jeff Bezos' company Amazon, and it's not because of any of the statistics. It's because his first impression of him is that he walks into the door and this guy, he's like laughing really loud and he's just exuding energy, comes bounding down the steps, and that moment he wanted to work with him. and so he invested. There was a bidding war, and it drove Amazon's valuation from 10 million to 60 million. So what this says, and what I think is true, is the amount of confidence that you put into anything. Um, Actions speak louder than words, I think. And even if you're like, I am confident, uh, sometimes people can notice when you are being a little bit, the energy that you exude. Unless you can mask the energy that you exude, or unless you're a very good actor, and you're able to change your energy so that it seems a certain way even when it's not. And here's the thing about acting. Acting is kind of like lying in a weird way. It is kind of like lying because you're causing emotions in yourself that are not yours. You're putting on a different character mask. You're not yourself. It's interesting. It doesn't mean that actors are bad or anything like that, but it does mean that when you're able to do that so fluidly, it begs the question, what is reality? The person that you're with, if they're an actor, how do you know they're not acting, right? Um, it's very interesting. So they can act happy, they can act sad or whatever, but like, what's the reality? What is really the reality? And again, actions speak louder than words. So even when somebody says they're confident, you can see maybe they're being sincere. Maybe they do believe that they're going to win no matter what. But the truth is, and the way I see it, is that you can even sense that they're trying to deceive themselves. You know that. You can tell from their energy. When I'm writing a story, when I'm writing with my friend, they can read my emotions. They can read the emotions that I have when I write. I'm able to put it down in words so that when somebody reads what I'm writing, they can feel that energy. And it's probably the same thing in this audio video that I'm doing right now. I am literally, my feelings are connected to my thoughts and my words, and you guys can feel how I feel. Right now I might be in a philosophical state, or maybe right now I'm bored. You don't know. I mean, like, sorry, you don't know. You do know. You do know. My voice will tell you everything. It tells you everything. And if I come in and I'm super energetic and I'm like really ready to roll and I'm really ready to give this a shot, I'm super confident, then you guys will know. If I'm doing this and I don't like it and I'm just drudging on, you will also know. If I'm super curious and I'm really, really asking questions all over the place, you'll know. My voice will tell you everything. The way that I talk, the way that I say things, all that. Enough about me, though. Let's keep going. Nuance, nuance, nuance. Two kinds of uncertainty. So usually when people talk about uncertainty, they are talking about when you're ignorant about something or you don't know. But that can be mixed up with uncertainty as, look, there's a 1 out of 5 chance that you're going to die with this. It's uncertain, but those are the facts. When we say uncertainty, people usually associate it with example A, incompetence, not knowing what it is that you need to know. What's funny about uncertainty, the name uncertainty, is that it blankets both of these types of uncertainty. There is incompetent or ignorant uncertainty, but there's also uncertainty in terms of the risk, and it can still be defined, but as we all know, things aren't guaranteed. Things aren't guaranteed. That's why it's really important. So, that's the main thing that is distinguished here in this chapter. we're separating the two types of uncertainty. And while we cannot ignore, I don't think there is any way that someone can be not ignorant about something. I'm sure that we are all ignorant in some area, or we're incompetent of some area. However, that doesn't matter, because if you know and you're confident that you don't know that area, you can simply state it and be like, well, that is not my expertise and I'm very ignorant about that. And you can be so certain about that that it doesn't matter. People will see you as a very certain person anyway. Because while you may be uncertain about what you're ignorant about, you are certain that you are ignorant about it, which gives people more of a reason to trust you. And in a weird way, what I'm learning about this is kind of this idea of like maybe charisma, but also trust. What does it mean to trust somebody? And to trust somebody, it really seems like it depends on how certain they are in terms of the social, that's what it's called. Let me see. Epistemic confidence, right? Is knowing the facts. So not in epistemic confidence, but social confidence. Social certainty, I guess you can even say. Right? These two types of certainty. All right. So Jeff Bezos does something very interesting, and it's kind of explored here in section 1. So there's two sections. One section is talking about show that uncertainty is justified. The second one is give informed estimates. So when you show that uncertainty is justified, like Jeff Bezos did, he said, look, in the PC revolution, when computers were coming out, there were 5 different companies. There were 5 companies that were going to rise to the top, but nobody would have guessed what those companies are. So right now, as things are, there is no way that we can predict that we are going to be number 1. He could say that we're trying, but there's no way that we can tell. So unfortunately, we can't give that, we can't give you a 100% guarantee. What's interesting about this is that it shows 2 things. One is that it shows that this person, Jeff Bezos, is competent enough to even realize that in the first place. And that insight, in and of itself, gives people the ability to realize that this person sees things outside of the box. He's very aware of what's going on. And that is a good sign. That is a good flag that I should trust this person. He's very aware of his own chances. He's not deluding himself. Imagine what happens to the guy who goes to his meeting, who's thinking about investing in him, and then he goes to another meeting, and the other people in the meeting are saying, "Oh yeah, we're so confident, we're 100% sure." But just a while ago, he may have just heard it. This venture capitalist might have just was just like, oh, okay, you say you're confident. But just a while ago, he was in a meeting with Jeff Bezos, and Jeff Bezos was like, look, there's no way you can really tell, because no one could have guessed the top 5 companies for the PC revolution. So based on that, it's kind of important that we don't jump to conclusions. Now, this venture capitalist, he's competing with somebody who's very aware of the situation versus somebody who's completely ignorant about the situation, who's certain but is very ignorant. Who would he choose in the end? So this does kind of like give Bezos an edge, because it's working on not just facts. I mean, facts are superior because it's objective, right? And you can justify the uncertainty. But also, he clearly sees something that the other person doesn't see, and he's not coming to conclusions so quickly. That's what's important. He's a little bit more skeptical. And people trust other people who are skeptical a little bit more, I would think, because skeptics, they've really walked around the entire bush and have looked around things and have analyzed things. There's respect that comes from that. A thorough investigation has been carried out. And that garners respect. I've realized with this next section, obviously give informed estimates, that when you actually cite your data where you get your information and you put it out there, that helps with trust. And also when you mention, look, if this data that I've acquired is correct, now it might be wrong, but if it is correct, then oh yeah, no, 100% we're going to make sure that this is going to be one hell of a success. That's totally true. That, being able to do that, being able to say, look, the risk is that this data might be wrong, but if this data is right, we got it in the bag, we're good. But there is a risk that, this data might be wrong, and perhaps the data can't be infallible. So, but we've done our best at collecting this data with as much unbiased parties as possible, and this is what it says, and this is what I think will happen. So this reminds me of an interview that I heard about for Final Fantasy 13, I believe. They took a poll from people asking what they wanted more from the Final Fantasy game, what from Final Fantasy games, and people said they answered they want more cutscenes. So, okay, Final Fantasy 13, literally you take 5 steps and there's a new cutscene. You take 5 steps, there's another cutscene. Filled with cutscenes, and a lot of people, they didn't like the game. They kind of hated the game. What's interesting is that while the people wanted more cutscenes, and the company was like, oh, well, more cutscenes means more likability, they forgot to factor in a few things about that. Because while the data may have said they want more cutscenes, that's kind of not, when you think about it, that's not what people really wanted. And also there's a sweet spot. Because, yeah, maybe more cutscenes, but not like 10 times more cutscenes. Don't oversaturate your soda, right? Sometimes that just means just a little bit more to make it just a little sweeter, right? But not, you don't want to oversaturate it. Also, the data did mention cutscenes, but maybe maybe it wasn't even the amount of cutscenes, maybe it was the quality of the cutscenes. Maybe it was, the quality of what cutscenes were happening, when they were happening. So that, I think, that's really important to understand and distinguish. So once you do get data, be very careful with that data. Because if you simply think that giving more of what people want, or giving more of what seems to be what is desirable, if you think that's the case, then, well, chances are you're actually not, well, you're not reading it correctly. So that's that. Moving forward. Oh, wait, before moving forward, sorry. I also noticed another thing that's interesting. I mentioned earlier, in the very beginning, in the introduction, that I was doing this because my friend was jumping into the stock market, and we talked about judgment. I'm realizing that Julia has a lot of examples with businesses also, and being an angel investor, looking at a perhaps, fledgling company. So just like with my friend who's investing in the stock market, I can probably see, and there are hints here that she has to make decisions. Maybe she's also an investor. I don't know if it's stock market investor or angel investor or anything, but it seems like she's very aware of this is how judgment plays a huge part in a daily life when it comes to making decisions about which business to go for or not. And that, I believe, is super interesting. So, moving forward, lots of business being discussed here in this book. Part 3, having a plan. Now, this is actually important because when you have a plan, you have a roadmap. There is certainty with that. And for someone who doesn't have a plan versus someone who does have a plan, it exudes way more confidence from someone. It influences somebody a lot more when you are more confident. When you're more confident and when yeah, you have that plan, you're like, look, this is A, B, C, and D. This is how we're going to do things. This is what we're working on. Makes somebody a lot more comfortable because they know where they're going. They know where they're going to be. Having that amount of certainty is paramount. Having a plan, that just adds to it. Enough said. Alright, so you don't need to promise success to be inspiring. This one is very, it's very, straight to the point. Everything is pretty clean cut. Julia mentions basically that you can have a vision, you can have lofty goals, you can paint a world that you want to create, and that alone can be enough to get people excited about what you're doing. You don't have to promise riches, you don't have to promise even certainty, but if you do show people that you really have a vision and you really want to help people and you really have this idea and you want to make it happen, that alone is important. It's very, very important. So, with that said, that's how influence can still come forth. And you can be justified with your uncertainty. You can cite your sources and be aware of those sources and mention if these sources are right, if they're good enough for you as it is to me, then yeah, I have confidence that this can happen, but you never know, right? So when you combine all these three things together, then you have way more. Oh, I'm sorry, and then you also have to have a plan too. If you know where you're going and you're certain about what your goal is and how you're going to get there, then that is basically all people need to form trust with you. It has nothing to do with how guaranteed you are at making them successful. Amazing. Great point. So, what I like about how she ends this chapter is that she compares sacrificing accuracy or the truth to sacrificing lunch money to a bully, right? Like, if you keep letting the bully push you around and you keep giving them your money, then yeah, that's one way to, to make sure that you're good. But why would you settle for that? There's so many different options that don't require that exactly. You don't have to do that. It's not required. And I think that's what's the most important thing about it is that you literally you have to see that in order to resolve the problem, you don't have to sacrifice the integrity of the truth or accuracy. You can get your goals and everything without any of that being compromised. Again, now doing a reversal and saying, okay, well, if that's the case, is there a counter argument to that? In terms of, sacrificing, accuracy, I believe, yeah, if you choose to sacrifice accuracy, you are deluding yourself. And depending on the delusion, again, I feel like there are lines that are hard lines that people will not draw, then it's worth it. Is it alright to have delusions in the first place? Like I said, if you found out that you were in a dungeon and you had no way out and you're in the worst situation possible, would you want to be made known that reality? You know, again, that's also an extreme example, but for most cases, like I expressed earlier, this actually does work for one's betterment. So only in extreme cases it's different. And most of the time when we're making decisions and we're making judgment calls, we are trying to we're really trying to do what's best for us. And if this works most of the time, this is good. So that's what I agree with. That's my verdict for this chapter. So anyways, so it's a great chapter. It was good going over all of this again. Can't wait to do it for next chapter. And until then, have a great day.